Let's start with the three different forecasts for Puerto Rico's deficit. Those are in your story. What do they show? And probably more importantly, which one is right?
Right. So most of them, all of them really are up to interpretation. And we do have the three, like you pointed out. The first one is from the official Puerto Rico government, and it shows a deficit after certain measures are taken of $14 billion through 2020. Then we also have what the government commission, which is a report from three IMF economists, former IMF economists, that shows $9.6 billion of a gap. So those are obviously very big numbers. And you're looking at things here that are, looking at taxes, trying to estimate how much is going to come in, how efficient you are in collecting, and also how quickly these spending cuts can really be put in. So the Morgan Stanley report looks at this and says, no, wait a minute, we are actually overestimating here by almost twice as much on the Puerto Rico report.
Laura, we just saw that graph on the screen. I guess my initial question is, why are those numbers, why is there such a wide disparity?
I think part of it, Mark, really does come from the difficulty of estimating some of these things and the assumption, as we pointed out in the story, Morgan Stanley is looking at and saying, well, wait, some of these things that you're not giving credit for, such as how much you're going to get back from the U.S. government on health care, you should be adding some of these things in, and you're not really, you're being too conservative. So you need to really add those things back so that the deficit is not, overestimated.
Sounds like something we heard a long time ago in a presidential campaign here, fuzzy math. Why do these numbers, why do the forecasts matter so much to investors?
Well, basically, if you have this number, whatever it is, if we decide on the 14 or you look at the 9.6, as an investor, Puerto Rico is going to use that against you and say, look, this is what we need from you. You need to help us fix the shortfall. This is how big the shortfall is. And if you suddenly have a report that says, well, hey, that's 60% overblown, then you sort of have this ammunition that basically crumbles the bargaining chip that Puerto Rico has.
Talk to us about what it seems to be headed towards a battle royale between Puerto Rico and its creditors. Is there any room for compromise on either side?
I think, Mark, there is room for compromise. It depends on how intransigent the bondholders are going to be. It depends on what they demand. Will they be like the Elliots in Argentina and demand absolute repayment? Or will they say, look, based on the time and effort and the cost to us on our advisors and all the things we're putting out, maybe it's a little bit better to settle for something. I think that you can see different things happen because Puerto Rico, it's not just one piece of debt. It's many different bondholders and many different boxes.
Okay, so many parts to the municipal debt. Where do the negotiations start? Which one comes first?
So what we've really been looking at and harping on is this place called the Government Development Bank. And Puerto Rico, we've been reporting, has really been zeroing in on this entity to say this is where we need to start. And they've been getting preparations together. Citibank is working with them, helping to do the restructuring. They're basically preparing the bondholders to get hold of, start talks there. Because that is a place that really connects to each little part of Puerto Rico.
Laura, have we heard anything more about possible discussions between U.S. congressional officials in Puerto Rico? Because, as you know, there have been some members of the Senate who say that perhaps Puerto Rico should be able to have a backstop. Maybe there should be some bankruptcy protections for Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory.
Right. You see, presidential candidates, you see senators, representatives, all talking about this. And I think you will see more and more. And there are discussions that are going on trying to figure out, well, what can we do? What would be out of the realm of possibility? Because all of these discussions, it gets harder if you don't have the Chapter 9 law to really force bondholders into an actual negotiation and to actually compromise and sign on the dotted line. You can have, say 30% of bondholders agree to this, but if the other percentage aren't going to agree and you have no way to force them, you really are sort of stuck.